Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dimitri Schneider, and I will be presenting the demo today on background concentrations in AERMOD. The agenda for today's presentation is mostly focused on non-nodes and regular background concentrations. And we will be going over 4 things today. One is how to set up the source group options so that you have background concentration. Then we will go over entering those concentrations for both a single wind sector and a multiple wind sector in AERMOD, and I will explain what those are. And also we'll mention how to use a background file with that. So to use background concentration, you do have to enter some extra entities into the source group section. So by default, the all source group will include background concentrations that you've entered. Other source groups will not. There are options to change that, as I'll show in a minute. And if you want to track the background concentrations separately, there's also a special source group to that called the background. So here's how that looks in the B software, and I'll show you in a minute how that looks in the AERMOD input file. So if you do have a background concentration, the source groups in these in the groups tab, you have the option to click at a checkbox 2 to exclude the background from all, which is this checkbox on the right, and also to tag it as a separate entity. Now, if you have entered some user groups like I have here, when you click the Define Sources group, you will see the second screen, which is where you select the sources to include in the group. And at this point, you also have the option of including the background concentration in that source's output, which again is not done by default. But if you do check this checkbox, you will see the background in that group's output. And now that I've selected these settings in these, here's how that looks in the actual AERMOD input file. Here's a special group background. You also have this special keyword background as a pseudo source for the tractor concentration. And then in the alt source group, we also include the background to the source. And again, in the other group that have defined, we also have a background option there. And these will add these to the input file for you automatically if you use these settings. So now that we know that we do want to include background concentrations, how do we actually do that? And in the AERMOD version 155.0, this has changed. Prior to that, you just entered a single set of backgrounds or background values for the whole model, regardless of where the wind was blowing from. And to enter a single sector, you select the one sector option, these called no sectors. And then you will have the options to enter different concentrations for either a year or a month, or there are several other options. In fact, let's take a look at those options now in these. So here is my groups tab. And if I select the no sectors and click the edit background, the options are set up under this checkbox temporarily varying. In this case, I think not selected, but I can also do by season, hour of day, hour of day and day of week, such as Monday through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And there are actually a few more options here as well. Once I select one of them, once I select one of them, I can skip the background and enter the actual value. Or in addition to those values, you can also use a background file, which we'll discuss next. If you have a background file which actually has background values listed hour by hour, and some of those are missing, the other options such as monthly or annual values will be used to substitute for the missing data. Otherwise, the values in the file will be used. And if you go back into B, that would be, if you click this hourly background file option and give it one or more files, then that option comes into play, and you can have the background concentrations read out of a file by AERMOD. So here I have a screenshot where I have selected the annual option and told it to just have 3 micrograms per cubic meter as the background throughout the year. And the micrograms is selected over here. You can also select parts per million and parts per billion in this checkbox, or I should say in this area. And then if I just select something like entering the values by month and click Edit Define Background on the previous screen, I will see a screen like this where I can actually enter those values. And that raises a question, I suppose, as to where would you obtain the background concentrations? Those are typically obtained from air quality monitors or air quality monitoring stations throughout the U.S. Sometimes you have to search for them, and sometimes the values are found on various states' agency websites. So if you need to obtain background values, you may want to check a state agency website first to see if they have them. Otherwise, you may need to search for a monitoring station and find it that way. So if you do want to use the background file, you will need to sort of set up one file to correspond to each metadata file that you have. For example, if you have 2 years of metadata in multiple files, you also need 2 background files. If you're just modeling 1 year of metadata, or if you're using a concatenated metadata file, then you just need 1 background file as well. And that's just a text file. It has rows for one hour at a time for each hour in a year. And it's set up like the example shown below, where you have the year 2013. This would be February 1st, hour 5, and then the background value is 3.4 in this case. And if you don't know of a value, or you don't have for an hour, then that value would be missing. So since you do have to set this up for a whole year and every hour in the year, my suggestion would be to set it up first in Excel, and then copy the data out of Excel into a text file. And by the way, these values are separated by spaces in the text file, not tabs, spaces. So once you have one of those files set up with the background values for every year, for every hour, and possibly some missing, you would select that using the hourly background file checkbox in Beast. And finally for today, I would like to talk about the new option introduced in AERMOD 13350, which is the multiple wind sectors. You can have between 2 to 6 wind sectors defined, and each one of them will have a separate set of background values. They have to be at least 30 degrees wide, and also importantly, the wind sectors are defined based on the direction to which the wind is blowing. So, for example, if it's blowing from the west, it's going to be blowing to the east, which is in the direction of 90 degrees. And so whichever wind sector that you have set up covers that 90-degree direction, that sector's background values will be applied to the current hour. And the EPA has done that so that if you have background data from multiple monitoring stations, you can use that data in AERMOD. And again, it's based on the direction to which the wind is blowing. So you have, let's say, one sector with a background file. You have another sector with just a monthly average, and so on. And to set this up in BC, you select the number of sectors there, and then go back to the same entry screen, but you'll have to enter one more thing there, which is the starting direction for the sector in degrees to the north. And in this screenshot, I have an example where that has been done. And in this case, it's sector 2. So in addition to entering the actual background value, I have to enter the starting direction for the sector here, which is 120 degrees. And then if you have multiple sectors, once you look at a background, the way to go from sector to sector is just the drop-down list. And here, if I go from the first sector to the second, here are all my settings for the second sector. I can go back to the first and change the settings there, and so on. And then go back to the drop-down list to go to the next sector settings. And that's something that EPA has introduced in AERMOD 16350 to give you more flexibility on how to enter the background concentrations. That concludes our presentation, and now I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone and go ahead and answer questions if you have them. Thank you for listening.